This is topic 6, lesson 5, multiplying a decimal by a whole number. We're talking about how you multiply a whole number by a decimal. And I've actually already given you an algorithm for this, but and I'm going to show you why that algorithm works. So the background you need for this is you need to remember that when you multiply or divide a number by 10 or 100 or 1,000, what you're doing is you're moving that decimal place over one direction or the other, depending on if you're multiplying or dividing, because we work in a base 10 system. So it's a factor of 10 in each direction. So 9 and 8 tenths times 10 would equal 98, because if we have 1 0 multiplied by 10, so we move that over one place, it would be 98. If we were multiplying it by 100, if we were doing 9 and 8 tenths times 100, now we'd be moving over two places. It would equal 980. So if we're multiplying, moving the decimal in that direction. Dividing is the opposite. We're making the number smaller. So in this case, we're going to divide by 10. So we're going to make the number smaller. So we're going to make the number, we're going to move the decimal in that direction. So 10, 110, we're going to move it over one place. It's going to become 98 hundredths. Now, if we were dividing that by 100, we'd be moving it over two places. Now it would be 98 thousandths. Okay? So multiplying or dividing by 10, you're moving that decimal place one direction or the other. Multiplying it, moving it that way. Dividing it, you're moving it that way. Okay. So 9 and 8 tenths times 2. Now, I don't want to deal with decimals when I'm multiplying, so I want to turn that decimal into a whole number. The times 2 is already, the 2 is fine. It's a whole number. I can deal with multiplying by 2. I've been doing it for many, many years now. So now, but in the 9 and 8 tenths part, I got to turn that into a whole number. So to turn that into a whole number, I have to multiply it by 10. If I multiply 9 and 8 tenths times 10, I get 98. So 98 times 2 would be 16, carry the 1, would be 196. The problem is, since I multiply by 10 here, what am I going to have to do to my answer? What's the opposite of multiplication? It's division, right? So since I multiply by 10 here, I'm going to have to divide by 10 here. And so in that case, I'm moving my decimal place over 1, and the answer would be 19 and 6 tenths. And if you remember, so let's just do it. Now I can use that algorithm that I taught you in the last lesson. So there's one decimal place in this, right? There's no decimal places in this. So I have one decimal place. So I'm going to move it over one place, 19 and 6 tenths. See, I did the same thing. This one decimal place is the division by 10. That's what I'm doing. I'm dividing by 10 because I multiplied by 10 up in here. I have to divide by 10 with my answer. So that's why that works. All you're doing is when you're moving that decimal place, when you're counting the decimal places and moving the decimal place over, what you're doing is you're dividing by a factor of 10 because you multiplied by that same factor in the initial factors. And this works for anything. It works for these. So if we have something a little bit bigger, so 457 thousandths times 3. Again, I'm going to think about this. I need to multiply this by 1, 2, 3. You need to multiply that by 1,000. And I would get 457 times 3. I get 1,371, right? 2, 2, 17, 13. Yep. Okay, so since I multiplied by 1,000 here, now I've got to divide by 1,000 here. So, and that would be over 1, 2, 3. So the answers would be 1 and 371. 1 and 371 thousandths. Okay, and that would be the same if we go back, we use that algorithm I taught you yesterday. I've got 1, 2, 3 decimal places, no decimal places, 3. So my answer, 1, 2, 3. Same thing. Since I multiplied by 1,000 here, I've got to divide by 1,000 here. And that's all we're doing when we're jumping those decimal places over. We're just dividing by a factor of 10. Okay, I wanted you to try it. Okay, how did we do? So we did 34 times 53. 3 times 4 is 12, carry the 1. 3 times 3 is 9 plus 1 is 10. We're going to put our whole 0 in because now we're multiplying by 50, not 5. 5 times 4 is 20, 2. Carry the 2. And 17. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 2 is 17. Now we're going to add 2, 0, 8, 1. And since I multiplied by 10 here, right, to go from my 5 and 3/10 to 53, I multiplied by 10. I have to divide by 10 here, so I'm going to move it over one place, so it should be 180 times 180 and 2/10. And when you think about that, that makes sense, because what would be, um, if we took and we did 34 times 5, we would get 170. So that makes sense that 180 is the answer. So that 180 and 2/10 is a reasonable answer, even without going back and looking at my work. Okay? So that is how you multiply a decimal times a whole number, and that's why that algorithm works. Thank you for listening.